This is the 2024 Ineos Grenadier, and you might say, what the heck is that, Tom? Well, in today's Vehicle Visionary video, we're going to give you the ultimate tour of this Grenadier. And by no means is this model fully spec'd out. But what's cool here is, yes, you have some modern technology, some modern safety features, all that stuff, but you have a very old school look. I'm going to let Carrie give you a look real quick without me in the shot, but here's what I see. I see the Land Rover Defender, just a little bit, a Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, and a Toyota Land Cruiser, all built into one. In fact, I'll have Carrie come in here when he gets to it. There's a plate on the front end here, just under the windshield, that really talks about what this model is. It says Grenadier right there, and then underneath it says built on purpose. Absolutely perfectly described. So let's see what you get if this is something you might be interested in buying, because it is crazy out of the ordinary for this day and age. Now, what is interesting here is while you have a very old school look all across the front end, really everywhere you look, the round headlights, you still have LED everything. LED headlights, LED daytime running lights, all of this stuff is here. Even your turn signals, which I've got the turn signal on over there on the other side, LED as well. There's some other high-end vehicles that don't have LED turn signals, for those of you who actually use yours. I hope you can hear that. That is solid steel. You've got all of the underbody protection. You even have some recovery hooks right here, or tow hooks as some people like to call them. You can call them either one. It's okay. You don't have to have correction Nazis having a fit down in the comments section because they don't like the way you say something. But something else that's interesting here, say compared to, well, pretty much any competitor, is the fact that, as was old school with a lot of vehicles, this is your hood. Your hood lines are right here, and don't worry, we'll show you more later on. But instead of being the whole front end where the hood just lifts up like this, it's kind of a complete old school look with how that is set up. Now, obviously, this is going to be four-wheel drive, and once we get into the interior, you might be blown away by some of what you find there. Also, the Ineos logo right there for the Grenadier. A very interesting thing. In fact, it has Grenadier almost every place you look. If somebody says, what is this thing called? You can say, just look at it and you'll see Grenadier right here. It would be kind of cool, I think, to have some kind of insert, maybe black in this case. I don't know that white would look as good there. Maybe a matte black insert with vinyl lettering. I don't know. Tell me what you think about that. And I want to make sure that Carrie gets in here and shows you the suspension and the shocks. It's all there. It's all solid off-road. No air suspension. Nothing like that at all. And so you see how serious this is for going off-roading. It really is quite the multitasking vehicle. And how about your tire and wheel size? On our width, we're looking at 265. We have a 70 series sidewall, and even though it doesn't look like it, they look a little bit bigger to me. Those are 17-inch wheels. Going to be the same at all four corners. You're going to have your mud flaps on the front and the rear. And something that you don't see a lot in the United States, this is actually something that comes from Britain where this model was born, but you have the turn signal indicators built into the fenders. In fact, if you have the snorkel, which would be on the other side, you actually would have that built into the snorkel. So it's sitting out a little bit further, but it's still there, just the way it's built. Obviously, we don't have power folding side view mirrors. They are adjustable, power adjustable. They don't even have turn signal indicators built in, but that's not really a big deal. And as we talk about the doors, again, going back to that old school look and feel, exposed door hinges, exposed screws, it's all here. It looks like something you would have bought decades ago. And you might wonder, what exactly is this? Is that just something that's decorative? Well, if we come back here to the rear, I can actually show you there's multiple mounting points for these hooks, and you can actually hang things off of the side of the vehicle. There's a lot of different options for that, but you can obviously have these in all of these areas. And also, what's very interesting here is the fact that, yeah, it is when you're used to a habit. I'm used to coming up with my truck and pulling on the door handle and it opens, and so I'm still getting used to pushing that button right there to open the doors. It's very, very interesting. Speaking of that, let me dig through my pocket here. In fact, I'm gonna have to reach into the interior to do this to show you. But here is what we have with the remote, but you don't use the remote to actually start it. It's a switch key. I always like to laugh about that because it reminds me of the switch combs of the 1980s that were so popular that my parents would never let me have. That probably explains why I own a switchblade now, because I'm too old for them to say anything about it. And again, solid steel. It is kind of interesting to get in and out of the interior, at least for me. When I hop onto the step to get in, it is very helpful because of the height of the Grenadier, but I find myself actually hitting my head up here. I have to be kind of careful. I guess I'm used to my own vehicle again because the roof line is higher. Now up here, there are crossbars. You've got the ability to haul some cargo up there, but there's also other things that could be added here. You could have lights and different things. You can, obviously with these bars right here, you can have more cargo up there, tie it down real easily, all that kind of stuff. And as we work our way around to the rear, again, we're gonna have LED lighting everywhere we look. Pretty easy to see that, especially in the shadow area right here. The only thing I wish was different personally, I really do like the ladder back here. It is so sturdy. I mean, if I was going to try and pull this Grenadier, should I do that? Should I try and see if I can pull it by hand? I bet I could. It would not hurt anything because this is so solidly mounted. I just wish there was a way to fold it down so you didn't have to get up quite so high. But that's the way it is. A full-size spare tire is always a win, especially when it's exposed like this. It's not under the vehicle. That's going to help in a multitude of ways. But something else that's interesting back here, and we'll get into this a little bit more, is the fact that this is actually a split tailgate, just not the way it normally is on, say, a Land Rover Discovery. You have the doors that open up apart from each other as they do. Very interesting. And we're going to get back to this area in just a little bit and give you all of the numbers on that. But something else that is very interesting is that there is a combination of what's going on here with different manufacturers working together. What do I mean by that? Let's open the hood and I'll tell you more. So the easiest way to tell you about what's under the hood is to have Carrie come in and show you what's on this gigantic plastic cover. Powered by BMW. That's right, this is the 3-liter inline turbocharged 6-cylinder, but it doesn't look the same way as it would if you opened the hood of a BMW such as the X5 that I did in my most recent video to this one. 281 horsepower, 332 on the torque. It's mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. No surprises there. In fact, when we get into the interior, you'll find that it has the same shifter as the BMWs do as well. I guess that just wasn't as easily interchangeable. But what's really interesting is when we come back here. If you're wondering, where in the world is the gas door? Well, it's right here. It's the largest I think I've ever seen on anything. So you'll notice that this area is very large. You also have the lack of capless fuel fill. That's nice to see. The reason this area is so large, you can't get it in America, I don't believe. I may be wrong about that, but it does have a diesel engine option. So you have the option for diesel exhaust fluid to be put in, all that kind of stuff. Those things that aren't really necessary, but that's what it is. And one thing we didn't cover back here is you do have the vents right here. Pretty much everything on this Grenadier is functional. It's very interesting to see. Well, it's typical old school. There's not a lot of faux vents and different things like that in different places. And now we'll give you a little bit more of an in-depth look at what we have here with our cargo space area. Let me step back out of the way and I'll give you a couple of different numbers. 7,716 pounds on towing, and your cargo space ranges between 40.6 up to 71.8 cubic feet. And there is no shortage of that. There is a ton of space here. And we'll show you a little bit more of the space that's available right here. Normally in Britain, you would have one of those triangles right here, the reflective triangles, but that's not required here. So you can just use this area for storing, well, whatever I guess you want to store in here, whatever will fit. Kind of an easy thing to deal with. Let's see if I can get that back on easily. This might be a little blooper for our video. Or a big blooper for our video. And yes, I did get it back on, in case you were wondering. Now, how about maximizing cargo capacity? Well, somebody is probably going to recognize this because it is familiar and comparable to one of the vehicles that I said this Ineos Grenadier looks similar to. So what am I talking about? Well, let me get this out of the way here. Notice what I just did right there. And then you have to take the headrest out, but to do that, what we have to do is do this, and then I'm going to pull the headrest out, and then I can fold this flat. Don't worry about doing that. That's too much trouble to do one-handed. We can obviously do both sides like that. That's how you get this flat area like this. Now, honestly, you don't have a flat load floor, unfortunately. It's just the way it's built. You have all this space down here where, well, it has a drop to it like that. But you know what? You can still fit a lot back here. Something might be angled up just a little bit, but that's the way it works. And obviously, to put everything back in place, well, that's not too terribly difficult to do, at least one-handed, or two-handed, I should say. One-handed, I don't know that I'm that talented. I might be, I might not be, but we're not going to find out. But let's do one thing. If you're wondering if there's storage space underneath the seat cushions, not really. You can see that we have some electronics and different things like that down here, so there's really not a lot, but you can see some of what is down here. Kind of interesting to see how some of these things are put together. There's really a lot of very interesting features and functionality here. One thing I will say is if you go to put this back in place, it is a little tricky to do. I guess once you get used to it, maybe it's not too bad. And then over there on that side, let's see if I can do this from here. I think I can. There we go. I actually did get that back in place. I do like for you parents out there that have the child safety seats, not a big deal. You just hook right in to the latch system right there. That's easy to deal with. That's always a convenience. Now, the one thing that I wish was here, in fact, I think there's only one in the whole vehicle, and that's a grab handle at the door right in this area. That's going to be up there where the front passenger door is. That would be a little bit easier, I think, if we had something like that. Now, you can use the old crap handle right here, but I don't know if I'd want to put a lot of weight on that. So we're not going to do that. Now, you'll notice that we do have some carpet down here. So the floor mats, those are optional, but the good news, obviously, you can take those out. And underneath, you just have the nice all-weather floor there, basically. Easy to deal with, easy to clean out. I like that. And I do have a lot of headspace here. I'm 5'10", so that should tell you how much headroom that you can potentially have. The one thing that's missing back here is the lack of cup holders. There are no cup holders anywhere. This is not something that we can actually fold down. There's no cup holders built in. It's not an armrest. Really, again, kind of that old school feel. But what's also interesting is that you have hooks like this all over the place. In fact, you've got one here. We've also got one that you should be able to see over my shoulder right there. But beyond that, I'll let Carrie show you one of the hooks right there that you can strap cargo down with. Really nice. That's something I don't think I've seen in any other vehicle anywhere. Now, you will find air conditioning vents here on the rear of the center console. I know a lot of you are interested in that. And you'll also find a couple of USB options as well. But that's all we have here. There is an optional 120 volt power outlet that can go right there. And I think this may be the best view as we begin to work our way towards the front seat to show the removable glass roofs right there, the portions of the roof that are glass. Those are removable. Thankfully, they're pretty heavily tinted because there's no shades for those. So kind of almost Tesla-like in a way. It's just not the whole roof. But on a really hot day, you better hope the air conditioning is working well. And we're doing things kind of backwards from what we normally do here. I guess I'm kind of just really enjoying checking out something that's completely out of the ordinary. I do want to thank the owner for being kind enough to let us borrow this for a while and tell you about it. But you'll notice on the door panels, and I'll let Kerry show you over on his side, the only place you'll find gloss black is on those door panels. Well, maybe a couple of other areas, but it's interesting that it's in those areas just there. There's nothing else on the door panels at all. So what you have is basically, you don't have an armrest there because there's just no room. But you do have an armrest up here on this upper portion right here, so there is a lot of space right there that can make up for it if you don't mind putting your arm up a little bit higher. All 4 windows are power, by the way, but going back to that subject of the lack of bottle holders, cup holders. You don't have a bottle holder built into the door bin. The door bin is pretty large, but really not accommodating for any kind of a bottle. It seems like that would be one thing that would be throughout the interior, because when you're off-roading, you're kind of away from everything and people are probably going to want to have something nearby. I guess you just have to hold on to it. And here is the interesting thing. So I'm going to use the switch key. I'm going to put it in, and just a little something that's interesting here. When you turn it like this, I'm gonna let Carrie show you, when you turn, out of habit of having a key, I'm just doing that because you normally, in previous vehicles over the years, you didn't have to put your foot on the gas pedal to start it, but you do here. Not a big deal, just one of those funny things that you have to get used to. The price point on this particular model, around $90,000. You can obviously spend a little less, you can spend a little more. It just depends on what your situation is. Earlier I mentioned it, now you can get a better look at it, and that is the fact that the only grab handle for getting into the interior is here on the passenger side front door. Not sure why that is. How do we compare the door panel over there to what we saw in the rear? Well, you have a nice large door bin again, but that kind of strange setup where you would normally have an armrest, basically there is none. You do have that nice large sill up there where the window is, so there is a lot of room up there. I think it's a little bit warm, so we don't want to roast Carrie's arm. That might not be a good idea. But the same basic setup that we saw in the rear. Now, one thing you won't find, period, on the Grenadier, power seats. So both seats are manually adjustable, but again, you know, sometimes I might say that's not a good thing. In this case, I think it's very well placed. Even at the price point of these vehicles, I still think that's good because it gives it that old school feel. And speaking of old school, here's what I guess we could call an oh crap handle. Not because there's a ton of horsepower here, but because of the off-roading capabilities and making sure you can hold on and stay in your seat. Also, let's see how much space we have. Kind of harder to see because there's stuff in there since this is somebody else's vehicle, but you have plenty of room within the glove box right there. So there is room, and there are obviously a lot of things there. And you can see the Grenadier logo down there on the floor mats, but nice to know that those are so easily removable. That way it's not going to have to deal, you don't have to deal with muddy footprints or anything like that. And while we're here, I don't know if this is the best view, but I'll let Carrie see what he thinks he wants to do. It's almost like being in the cockpit of an old school jet fighter, or maybe new school, I don't know. It just kind of makes me think of a particular scene from Top Gun Maverick, where it's, oh, this thing is old. Some of you are going to know what I'm talking about, some of you won't. But what's interesting here is these bars that are on each side, and this isn't the only place where you find those. Maybe that's a mini oh crap handle. I don't know, you can push your finger up there. I wouldn't recommend that. But I really like all of the buttons and switches here. Talk about old school. It really gives you a different involvement with the vehicle as far as driving it and managing everything than what you would have anywhere else. And think about this. We also have all of the switches and controls down here for the air conditioner and the radio and so many other things. What if all of that was in the infotainment screen, the same way you have with some of the Land Rovers these days that have been redesigned over the last year or two? Well, that would be very interesting. In fact, you have heated seats. I would like to have ventilated seats too. Let's make sure that's off because I do not want to be hot today. But you can see everything that's here. And again, those bars right there, that is so interesting to have that. I guess, again, you can just reach in there and hold on tight, and then you can push the button for the hazard lights if you wanted to. And you do have a touch screen up here. It is kind of far away, but not terribly bad. But you can see what's here. Let me go into reverse. Excuse me, let's go into reverse. There we go. Now we're in reverse so you can see the backup camera. A little bit hard to see just because of the glare that we have, but that's what it is. What's very interesting here, do you notice what's right here? That's your speedometer. That's the only speedometer because over here in front of the driver, well, you don't have any of that stuff. In fact, let me do this. I'm going to turn the vehicle off just so you can see what happens when I turn it on. You get a bunch of lights right there, basically. Very interesting, but that's all that you have. So it was kind of an interesting experience driving over to our filming location, having to look at the screen to see the speedometer over there. Obviously, you know what you're doing with the transmission. If I wanted to go into neutral, I just do that, or into reverse, and I know where I am. Hit the button for park. I'm going to hand that back to Carrie real quick. We'll finish looking at this area. Again, old school, well, versus new school. You have the traditional style BMW shifter for that 8-speed automatic transmission, but a very much old school style control for the 4-wheel drive, whether you're going to be in high or low. And let's see if I can get my mic to pick this up. Here is an old school thing. Listen to this. It actually sounds like an old school parking brake. I like that. That's kind of cool, because there are still some vehicles that have parking brakes, but they don't have that sound anymore. They have parking brakes that are manual, I should say, instead of a power parking brake. Now, for those of you who are like Monk, and I'm finding out kind of like myself because I still have the protective film on my screen on my new truck, well, you can use the dial and the buttons right here to go to everything you want to. If you want to go to menu, if you want to go to options, whatever you want to do, we can go back. You can see all the buttons right there. You can obviously control things right here. Can you hear that? I hope you can, because it has kind of a neat sound to it. And the cup holders right here, a little bit smaller than what I would expect, but obviously you could put some bottles in there. If a big gulp, I don't know if that would fit or not. One might fit, but you definitely couldn't have two side by side. And here with the center console, that does have a lot of stuff in there. We're not going to move anybody's stuff, but that's what it is. And you can see some of your connectivity right there as well. But I feel like I should open that and have a refrigerated console, just like the Land Rovers have. Kind of surprised that isn't there. Now here's something that is really interesting. There are two different horns. Very interesting how this works. So you have your traditional horn right here. It's pretty loud. And then you have the horn right here with the bicycle on it. I guess that means if there's one of those kamikaze cyclists that ride in the middle of the road with all the distracted drivers that are looking at their cell phones, I guess that's what they're expecting to hear, so they can look back and say, "Distracted driver, let me get out of the way." Very interesting. And the steering wheel itself even kind of just has an old school look to it. I know Carrie doesn't like not having that third spoke right here. Yeah, he's just loathing over there right now, but it is what it is. It's here. You know, on his BMW S-Class Mercedes-Benz S-Class, boy, did I just open myself up to the correction Nazis on that one. I'm not editing that out. On his BMW, was it the BMW? The Mercedes-Benz, the Mercedes S-Class. Boy, I tell you what, that's what happens when you talk too much and then your brain starts going all wired crazy and everything. See, what I just did is the equivalent to the look on Carrie's face when I talked about not having that third spoke here. So there's a good example for you. But he actually put one in on his Mercedes that just really looks pretty cool. If you saw it, you would think it was already there, but it wasn't. So it normally would have this set up. But that's just what's here. You do have some controls here, obviously, and pretty easy to deal with. And going back to the horns real quick, you have a city horn and a country horn here. And the only reason is that is another British thing. In England, you can't have a really loud horn. So guess what that means? The loud horn is the country horn. That's the city horn. I guess because you'll have more people on bikes in the city than you will in the country. It's not like it is in Shreveport, Louisiana, that's for sure.
Hey, Vehicle Visionary fans. Something I wanted to point out when I was getting into the passenger side of this vehicle is that of all the videos Tom and I have done, I've never seen a vehicle that had a dead pedal on the passenger side floorboard. So as I was getting in, I noticed that I have a dead pedal for my left foot right there. That's unusual. I guess when I'm grabbing a hold of this on those off-road drives, I can comfortably rest my foot right there. Just wanted to point that out. All right, so driving the Ineos Grenadier 2024. People, this thing is old school feeling, but in a cool way. Speed limit is 25. I'm doing a little bit more than that, and it was clicking and it was telling me to slow down. So, how does this feel? Is it 45?
Yeah.
That little blue sign up there says 25. Anyway, we're driving around, and So everything I own has air suspension. So I'm used to drive. I have a Range Rover Sport, air suspension. I would never think I could take it off-road because it's so soft. This, I can feel it. This is looking for some off-road territory. It's bouncy, it wobbles a little bit, but it feels really, really cool. You can hear what's going on outside of you. It has a compass over here. It's a little unusual to drive with the gauges not directly in front of me. Yeah, everybody's used to that. The only thing I can see in front of me is that the lights are on, but all my information I need is over here. But you know, when you get used to looking over there to the right, we have infotainment screens anyway these days, so this isn't difficult to get used to. But this feels really, really good. It's springs and struts and all those things in the back and in the front, and you can really feel it. But at the same time, it's not uncomfortable. Everything I do need to use is right here in front of me on my steering wheel. I've got my cruise control right here. I have my city horn and my country horn if I need those. But I would use the country horn in the city here in Bossier City and Shreveport. You have your buttons here for activating your voice activation, volume control, your channel adjustments for your radio, the cruise control button. I can do my lights from here. I can see my wipers from here on the stalks. I have adjustability for my tilt, telescope, and steering wheel. I have my mirror controls right here, my door unlock and lock buttons. I have power window controls here on the door. I have everything I need. I can see through this roof right here, which is pretty cool. And it's not the entire roof, of course, but there it is. I don't have to worry about power roof buttons. I can pull that latch back and tilt it up if I want to. That roof will come out. I could push it out and jump out if I need to. These fighter control gauges look so cool. I just want to play with them while I'm driving, but that wouldn't be cool. And Tom's in the back there. I don't want to scare Tom if I'm playing with buttons and wobbling around. Tom, how's the passenger part feel?
It feels old school.
Tom said it feels old school back there. Sitting pretty high?
Definitely very high back here.
Sits high back there, pretty cool. I mean, this vehicle is so cool. I'm so happy that the owner let us review it. This is not a vehicle you're going to see a lot of if you ever see one. And it's very, very, very cool. I love this old school ride. It's not quiet. It's not overly noisy. It is extremely off-road cool, city cool. But you have to drive it, because I'm driving it now, and I can tell right now that I can't drive it the way I drive a Range Rover Sport or a Mercedes, where it's going to do things for you. You don't want to take curves too hard in this, because it's probably not going to make defaults and adjustments for you to keep you on the road. And if you make a mistake, it's probably going to let you make that mistake. But if you make that mistake and go off-road, you have all the stuff you need to crawl yourself back onto the actual road. So if you've ever wondered what an Ineos Grenadier is, here it is. If you ever see one on the road, now you know what it is. See you next time, folks.
So tell me what you think about the 2024 Ineos Grenadier. That's the ultimate tour that we've given you today. A very interesting balance of a little bit of modern technology and definitely a lot of old school features and functionality. Definitely capable off-road. I wish we could take it somewhere and really put it through its paces, but we just don't have that kind of thing around here. So tell me what you think. I do want to say a special thanks to the owner for being kind enough to let us have this for a couple of hours to tell you all about it. I also want to thank each and every one of you for being kind enough to give us the opportunity to give you a vision for your next vehicle. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. That helps us out a lot. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. That way you don't miss any future videos. And if you would like to learn about additional vehicles you may wish to consider purchasing, check out that video right there on the screen, and we'll see you there.